Hello everyone, are we ready to start? Alrighty, so good morning, welcome to my talk. I will talk about Drupal in a creative space. So I think we're all familiar with, branding agency located in your local town or a city. Those, offer services typically like branding, logo design, photography, Facebook pages, setup, and when it comes to website development, they develop websites mainly in WordPress, and they're normally, kind of premium theme brochure websites. Now, these local branding agencies, these services are tailored for plumbers, butcher shops, and primary schools, maybe secondary schools. Again, very, very local. Due to their size and limited budgets, they kind of lack, resources for more of a sophisticated and data-driven decisions when it comes to growing the business. Many of them rely on grants, and a lot of their business model relies on that. And I'm kind of focusing now on branding agencies located in, Western countries like Ireland, UK, or United States. Now, the market does not like the void, and there is work in that specific field. However, when it comes to Drupal usage in that space, it's rarely used, mainly because the profit margins are relatively small, so it just doesn't make sense to do it. That isn't always the case, but kind of based on my observation, that's the way it works. A couple of years ago, the work of these branding agencies was outsourced abroad to Eastern Europe, for instance. However, nowadays the outsourcing has, shifted a little bit further east, as countries like Poland are a little bit less competitive in terms of the pricing. Now, creative agencies, on the other hand, operate at a slightly different level. They provide a range of services that communicate or attempt to communicate effectively with their audiences. Budgets are significantly larger, and their clients are generally more familiar with the digital and kind of marketing concepts. Very often they have their communications team, their ICT teams, and the decisions are very often or more are based on data rather than just gut instincts, right? Creative agencies, they attempt to provide a more of a comprehensive kind of 360, holistic approach when it comes to communicating their message, their stories to their audiences. And this is one of the main differences compared to the local branding agencies in kind of local towns, is that creative agencies provide a couple of different endpoints. And this goes beyond website development. It includes print, it includes traditional media like radio ads, TV ads, maybe cinema ads. And when it comes to website development, website is just one of the elements of these endpoints that these creative agencies use to communicate their message, their story to their audiences. For that reason, communication within the company, within the creative agency, when it comes to the client and kind of 360, is absolutely, absolutely crucial. Okay, so just a couple of words about me. I'm head of development at a creative agency based in Ireland. At the moment, I'm primarily focused on DevOps and kind of implementation stuff. Before this, I explored web development across several other areas. I work with a branding agency as a front and back-end developer in WordPress environment. I've also worked for a dev house as a Drupal support engineer. And I've done a lot of contract work for various different small and large companies, primarily in Ireland and US, and a little bit of UK as well. I've worked both on salary and as a sole trader. I was a registered sole trader, or I am a registered sole trader both in Ireland and in Poland. And this gave me some insights into how the industry works, but not only from implementation technical perspective, but also from business growth and sustainability and scaling side. So there are two types of communication. There are two types of communications that I would like to discuss with you now. It's internal and external communication between the client, the digital agency, and between departments that we could have. When it comes to external communication with the clients, whether it's their ICT or communication teams, it can be difficult to establish a good standard, especially given the variety of their clients and their know-how, ambition, budgets, and so on. Now, as you might know, software development, kind of regardless of the technology used, is a crucially or fundamentally collaborative process between the agency and the client, right? Therefore, the communication needs to be established and needs to go very, very smoothly. Some organizations, our clients, let's say, may not have a dedicated product owner or a project manager in that sense. And imagine you're meeting with some of the company representatives from the client side, but there is no clear sort of stakeholder or decision maker there on the call. The client's team might need a little bit of informal guidance, maybe a little bit of hand-holding when it comes to communication, to have them communication internally within the organization. So what we want to do then is to identify the most suitable person for each task on the client side from their team that will be able to help us to achieve the task that we need to get done. And here is some kind of extreme example here. Imagine you're having a heart attack in a park full of people. The chances are that no one will help you, okay? And it's not because people are bad by nature. It's it's called a bystander effect, and it's a social psychological theory. So the best strategy there is to have a look at the individual, and say, hello, you sir in green jacket or whatnot, please call 911 or 112 in our context. And the chances are that, yes, this person will go ahead and actually help you. And just being aware of the bystander effect as developers, as engineers, can help us to communicate with other departments, just being aware of it. So we have two examples here that I'd like to discuss. Let's assume we have an initial call, let's have a kickoff call, let's say, with a client's team. And that team includes some sort of stakeholder. We don't know exactly what their roles are, but they have some sort of ICT representatives, a marketer, communication person, and then maybe there is someone else on the call that we have no idea what they do. And I'm sure you're familiar with that concept as well. And let's assume it's for a third-level educational institution like university in, I don't know, States somewhere. And there is no product owner on the client side. So what we want to do is to conclude the kickoff session with the client by sending them a follow-up email, ideally on the same day, so we still have the momentum going. So there are kind of two ways we could tackle it. So let's imagine I'm sending an email like that to the client, a follow-up email. All right? Personally, if I received something like that, or I was copied on it, CC'd in it, I would not read it. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be bothered, to be honest with you. The actions are not clearly defined. We don't know who I'm addressing exactly in that email. And again, it's called, the bystander effect. The bystander effect, like we discussed earlier, concepts are being applied here as well. So there are a couple of ways how we could improve it. So now this is significantly easier. We're addressing one person that we believe is some sort of coordinator on their side. And then we also help that coordinator from the client side to identify other members within that organization to provide us with some actions. Okay, so again, just like with the heart attack example that I described, John will grant us access to the DNS. Amy will review and sign off the final artwork document. If you want to be a little bit more strict and play the project management role, we can give the individual clients members, staff members, some deadlines like the 1st of June, etc., etc. And now it's our job to determine who is responsible for specific actions within the organization and what their appetite as individuals, okay, that's important, as individuals is to help us, to help them to move the project forward. This is done through informal chit-chats, proper introductions, and by sometimes asking direct questions. It might seem like a waste of time to get to know the way of thinking and methodologies used internally within an organization. Like, what's the point of learning individual members' kind of characters, informal stuff. But gathering this information can be absolutely crucial for the success of the project, especially when we talk about the creative space, when the responsibilities are not clearly set. And we want to be aligned with the client. And the client is not an organization. I know it's such a cliche, but when we work with the client's team, we don't work with one person, we work with individuals, with their names, with their personalities, character clashes sometimes, and different ambitions. Let's say, for the sake of argument, Connor might not want to help us much for some reason. We need to know that information. And then once a solid relationship is established, it makes the project management later on significantly more streamlined. Now, at times, we might discover that the client's technical person is not as technical as we'd like, right? And we shouldn't really highlight it in front of everyone there on the call, especially to his coworkers. It wouldn't be fair. We don't want to make a scene out of it. Instead, what we want to do is to adjust our communication or the style of our communication with that person, with that less technical person, in a way to kind of adjust to his or her skill level. Now, in an ideal world, all of the communication like that would be managed by a project coordinator or some sort of product owner on the client side or our side, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the actions or discussions can get a little bit technical, and the lines between the engineering and solutions and the project management can be somewhat blurred at that stage, especially in creative environment. And also, if you focus only on one person, someone that we believe that is acting as a project manager on the client side, there's a really high chance that that person might not be suited for the role, okay? And that they could struggle to manage their own coworkers internally. And this is very, very, very common within organizations, especially third-level institutions. Therefore, helping that person, John, for instance, we need to help them to manage their own coworkers if needed. And on top of that, kind of personalizing emails like that, or if you're using another communication channel, it helps to establish a direct and respectful kind of connection with the client. Okay. So another very common scenario that we face as a web agency is when working with a third party, or sometimes they're called vendors, depending on the jargon, on the client side. So, for example, as developers, as a web agency, we want to set up an S&T email and add it to our website to send emails. There's no rocket science here. It's a very common request. And we don't particularly want to get in contact. We don't particularly want to have a direct contact with the email provider kind of company managing the entire infrastructure for the client, not particularly, for a couple of reasons. We don't want to be made the decision makers. It can get a little bit political, and we might just not do it. We might not get paid for it, right? So in that case, what we want to do, we want the communication to happen through the client. And again, it might vary depending on situation from situation, but that will work. So in that case, we want to write an email for our less technical client, okay, that they can simply copy paste and send it over to their email provider company, right? In that case, we have to be, empathic and think about who will read and act on that message from the client side and the email provider. The more tailored and kind of suited the message is for the recipient, the higher the chances that they will respond to us and resolve the issue or address the query that we ask them to do. All right. So when it comes to actual implementation of projects, when it comes to internal communication, the goal of effective communication is to determine what needs to be done and how, with a minimum number of chats or emails between the team members internally. I think that makes absolute sense. However, if there are some repetitive tasks that we could have, which is very common in a creative agency space where a lot of websites are being developed, this can be addressed by using some sort of procedure. When developer talks to another developer on channels like Slack or Drupal.org, the tone can be quite straight to the point and abrupt. For someone outside of the technical world, it might come across as rude even, And I've had a couple of instances where an interface designer, an artist really, gave me a feedback for not using emojis, in my communication with her. And that was a serious feedback. And my point is, I know, but that, yeah. And my point is that some individuals or even departments or clients individually might expect a more expressive tone, especially in creative environments. So when working with non-developers, we need to be a little bit flexible to align with the company culture or individuals. If we are approachable to work with, coworkers are more likely to come to us with questions at the start of the project and clarify things early on. Now, this will require patience from our side. It doesn't cost us much to adjust our communication with these members or departments, maybe a little bit of headspace and maybe annoyance, but in a long run, it is absolutely worth it. Great. Sometimes when we notice a communication with the team isn't going as well or as smoothly as we planned, or it leads to frustration on both parties, we can introduce some methodologies to reduce the amount of back and forth with these members or departments. So let's consider another use case. As an agency, we develop a lot of websites. This involves determining information architecture, content types, standard pages, event pages, components that we live within certain content types, etc. So what we've done at Picant is this. A Word document, great. So we have a Word document where an information architect adds CMS entries like content types, sometimes some fields and components that should live within these content types, okay? Now, with having this space, we can take this information and onboard an interface designer and map it on a design system like Pattern Lab or a Storybook. Or we can give this information to the developer to kind of map it within the Drupal entities. Okay? Again, there's no rocket science here. But we've created this kind of shared agnostic space where information is entered only once, by an information architecture designer. And from there, we can communicate different paradigms with other team members. Now, when it comes to agnostic here, it means agnostic for both technology and the department. And it becomes some sort of gospel and, in fact, a documentation of the project. It's a great starting point, a Word document. Also, knowing the complexity and the amount of components and content types, it's also a good opportunity to review the project from the financial perspective. If it's too complex, maybe we have to adjust it slightly to be within the budget, essentially. So we took this concept a little bit further, and we automated the process of creating these Drupal entities in actual Drupal, okay? So here is how it works. The Word document that we've seen previously is converted to a JSON Sometimes we might use ChatGPT to help us with it a little bit. Again, there's no rocket science here. But then what we've done, we've built a Drupal module that uses that converted JSON, and it actually creates and attaches content types and components into actual Drupal website. So what you can see on the screenshot here is some of information that could be helpful by developer to actually review it. So as a developer, we don't really have to create content types. We don't have to create components or attach them to certain content types. All of that technically is done by a information architect in a Word doc, essentially. So all of that we discussed, all of that is a part of communication, or rather our approach to limit the number of unnecessary discussions and talks that could lead to additional assumptions and creep of the project. This paradigm allows other departments to talk to each other. And the data is added once, agreed upon, and understood by different departments. And naturally, the naming convention that we have is used across the board, in the front end, in the back end, in the documentation, et cetera, et cetera. If it's changed in the Word document, we should have methodologies to automatically update it throughout the board. So fantastic, we have entities. But on top of that, what we've also done, we created another layer that generates nodes, the actual content, based on a separate but a similar document. So it generates nodes, adds sample content, adds that content to menu structure, et cetera, et cetera. So at this stage, we have entities and content added to the Drupal website, technically all assembled in a Word document, not by developers. So from our perspective, it may be 5 minutes of time to actually go ahead and import it to our system. So what really happens here is that the information architect, creates 90% of the website, technically. I'm exaggerating a little bit because this doesn't include like custom logic, like views. It doesn't include integrations. But this is something that a developer is still needed for independently, And it makes sense to focus on automation like that, especially in creative space, in digital agencies where, you go through a lot of websites, essentially. There are just benefits to it. It allows different departments to talk to each other, like I said, number of times, to review budget. It's understood by back-end developer, by front-end developer. It's used by validation. It limits the frustration and manual labor. So there are only benefits to this approach. Do we have time to show you the actual demo of it? 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll do 5 minutes. I'll show you what it looks like in action. Okay, let me open it up here. So this is the website that we have. I'm sure you're kind of familiar, or where you work, you have some sort of starter team. So this is exactly what it is. Let me just adjust a little bit here. Okay, so what we want to do is to first of all log in here. So in start to start the project. Okay. I want to log in because it logged me out. Okay, so I think we're all very familiar with this. So what we have here is, content added, etc. What I will do is just remove it for the sake of this demo. Delete content, delete, so you can see that we do not have any content here. When we look at the content types, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, standard ones that we have in our starter team. Okay, what I'll do now is go to extend and enable, because to be honest with you, I can't remember if it's actually enabled. that module. We call it internally Project Sparkle. Please don't judge. Okay. Let's go ahead and actually enable it. I might have to clear the cache. I can't remember, but there is no harm doing that, as we all know. And now what we can do, we can use a drush command to actually do it, but I'll do it through the interface here, and I'll say go ahead and create Drupal entities. So this script will go ahead and create content types and create and attach components to content types. It will highlight some kind of interesting information here. For example, this component does not exist with the system. So we still have to go ahead and as developers create certain things manually, which is absolutely fine. So this is just kind of a validation method. So when we go to structure and we go to content types, we can see that we have more content types here added by the script. So let's go to recipe, for instance. We can see fields here that were also added by the script and content types attached to that, paragraph in that instance. Okay, so that's quite neat. And as a developers, we don't have to touch any of that. All of that is done, again, by information architect in a Word document. So fantastic, we have content types created, or entities created. And the same applies for vocabularies and things like that. So no content is created here, so let's go ahead and run another script. Where is my pointer? 1 second. There. Okay. And now, if I remember correctly, it's called Sparkle, and let's call it Notes. It will go ahead and add notes for us. Okay, so let's go to. So you can already see it happening here. Notes got added to the system here. Let's go to content. We have the notes added here. And if we go to structure and menus, and if you go, I believe it's the main menu, main navigation, you can see they're added respecting the hierarchy. All right? So that's quite neat. And on top of that, I don't think I have it here right now, but we also add sample content, lorem ipsum to these pages. So that's quite nice, And again, from our perspective as developers, we only have to go ahead and actually import the data. That's it. Okay, cool. Great. So kind of very quickly, I don't think we'll have chance to go through all of the points. Maybe I'll go through the career progression. So within creative space, there's no clear roadmap to promotion, as you can imagine. You have to have some sort of plan. Everyone hates that, but what's your plan for 5 years' time, kind of thing, But you need to have some sort of kind of maybe guide where you want to be, because working creative space, especially kind of small and medium-sized agencies, it's simply not there, Therefore, it's very important to kind of attend places like that to kind of be aligned with other professionals. Mentoring is a little bit more limited as well. If you want to have kind of proper mentoring like there is in a larger dev houses, you'll have to do it outside of the creative space, essentially. There is a startup culture vibe. It's hated and loved by some. It really depends whether you like it or not. It kind of relates to hard work as well. It's difficult to establish a metrics on success. Because in a creative space, it's really, really difficult to put numbers on certain things. Salary ceiling, that's important as well. If the agency that you're working for is not evolving, is not growing, the chances are that you will stay on the same salary, essentially. Therefore, if you want to kind of continue with your career, it's kind of important to keep that in mind as well. Another very important thing is, to take the initiative. The chances are that no one will tell you what to do. It will be kind of up to you to determine, okay, I want to learn that technology because I think it will be valuable and I could then use it with, interaction designer kind of crowd and kind of work together. So it's kind of like R&D, but unofficial, essentially. So yeah, a lot of initiative is needed from individual team members. Market does not like the void, so there's a lot of work in that space. But you have to be kind of smart to find the niche there. Burnout, and I think there's a separate talk about it, so I'll not go into detail, is a very common in this space because you go through a lot of projects, you finish the project, you're super happy with it, and you're just starting another one, with another deadline. Okay, I think we might leave this, and just very quickly, I'll go through the managing multiple projects on how to do it or how we do it. So due to the nature of working for a creative agency, there are multiple active and production projects being done on the same time, and there is also an ongoing support and maintenance. Many of these kind of smaller companies might, or many of these small projects might require, that are on support and maintenance, might require attention only maybe twice a year, But because the profit margins are relatively small on these maintenance projects, we need to have a very streamlined methodology on how to actually provide maintenance and support on it. That's why tools like DDEF, and I think there's another talk about it later on, Doxel or Docker, just directly, are absolutely crucial here. They allow us to maintain a consistent environment, what's on the live server and what's on our production server. And from a perspective of creative agency and support and maintenance, it's absolutely crucial. So we're using Doxel internally to map the web server kind of settings with our local settings. And this is just a very quick screenshot of what it looks like. We want to be as close as possible to the live environment. Naturally, this config file is saved in Git. So if I update it or there is a slight PHP change version change on the live server, we update it in this configuration, and automatically it's updated for our developers locally. For small and medium-sized agencies, kind of maintenance and support like that, it's a very important aspect of the entire business model. So this needs to run very, very smoothly. Because in a single day, a Drupal support engineer might need to work on 10 websites, very different websites, and set them up on their local machine. And ideally, so that it makes sense from a financial perspective, they need to be able to set it up, in 15, half an hour. Unless naturally it's something complex that requires like VPN or and things like that. But most importantly, kind of sticking to standard like that reduces the need for excessive training of the developers, improve security, speed. It's just logical to have it like that. And kind of lastly, it's important to be firm with clients on the technology to be used, because every exception will lead to additional costs of kind of managing the exception and training the team on how to manage that exception. So we have to be super, super strict with the client. And this is kind of the last thing that I'll mention. If you have a client that is getting onboarded, we need to go ahead and establish the relationship with the client. It might be somewhat difficult to tell the client, no, you're going to go ahead and move to a service of our choice, otherwise we want the business. Some clients might not like it initially. Therefore, I think sometimes it makes sense to kind of sacrifice it and stay with the existing infrastructure for maybe half a year or so, prove ourselves, provide a very good value in terms of support and maintenance, and then slowly recommend the client, considering the budget as well, that will go ahead and migrate your entire infrastructure onto the servers managed by a particular provider, and then the pricing will be reduced, but then we'll be able to promise kind of full coverage, essentially. So yeah, we have to be super strict with standards and the clients to take advantage of the economy of scale so that it makes sense, but at the same time, we have to allow for some exceptions, and all of that is kind of informal, So that's that. Thank you. Do you have any questions? And lastly, naturally, I wanted to say thank you to all the volunteers and Droptica for kind of organizing this event. No questions. Okay, 3, 2, yeah, go on.
Maybe some tips and tricks from maybe some tips from the real life. Like for example, in my last small project for start, the product owner was very non-technical. And
Very common.
The communication project would take a long time. Everything with mailings or even live meetings. Project owner didn't make a decision right away. It was next week and next week and next week.
And was it the project owner on your side or the client side?
On client side.
On the client side, okay.
Yeah. On my side there was a PM, so everything was cool. But in the end, we get to the meetings with the product owner and some technical guy from the company, company, and together they could make a decision right away. So, but it took a month, 2, 3 to figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there is no standard for it. You know, that's why I kind of mentioned that, you know, the client is not organization as a kind of abstract entity. It's individual members that we will interact with, you know, and sometimes that will require a little bit of kind of personal, you know, chit chats and informal kind of methods to kind of see what's going on, just to push the project forward, you know, because we need to help them with it, because otherwise the project will stagnate, right? Yeah. But yes, it is absolutely tough. Yeah. Any more questions? All right, we can wrap it up here then. Thank you.